It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm your host, as always, Austin Peterson, coming to you live from lovely Gilbert, Arizona today. And I have my co-host, best co-host in the business, Landon Mance, on the show as well from Las Vegas, Nevada. Landon, welcome in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I think today's going to be a little extra fun. So for those of you who are listening in for the first time, we're a podcast and radio program for small business by small business. Landon and I are small business owners and have been for a long, long time. We also have parents who are small business owners. We believe in the small business owner being the true backbone of the American economy. And today, we typically have an outside guest with us, but today, unfortunately, our guest that was scheduled, our thoughts are with Thomas Bridge, who had to have an unanticipated procedure done and was not ready health-wise to join us on the program today. So good news, bad news, and it really depends on whether you feel that it's good news or bad news, and you can judge that in about an hour. It's just going to be Landon and I today. So we're going to talk through a little bit about what we do specifically for our business owner clients, and tell some stories along the way and give our audience an opportunity, as this is about our 70th episode, to get to know a little bit more about us and where we come from and what we do for our business owners every day. So, Landon, let's start with you. Tell us about your family a little bit more. We do talk about the twins quite a bit on the show, but tell us where you grew up. Tell us your dad's background in business. Let's get a flavor for the Landon Mance empire.
Yeah. Absolutely. Landon Mance Empire. I like the sound of that. Yeah, so I grew up in San Diego, and my dad has been a 40 or 50 year entrepreneur, mostly in the commercial development and management. He's designed and built some beautiful medical buildings, some mixed use buildings, some commercial buildings. Mostly all in Southern California. And actually, something interesting that I did not know until maybe a month or two ago, that my dad's dad had started and sold a roofing company. And I didn't get to know my grandpa on that side of the family very well. He passed away at a relatively young age. And frankly, my dad doesn't really talk about him all that much. I didn't know really what he did. I knew that he was in the Marine Corps because he had this really old school anchor tattoo on his forearm, which I guess was a very common thing for young Marines to do back then. But I didn't really know much about his professional career. And I just found out, just in the last couple of months, that he actually had owned, operated, and sold a roofing company. I've got 4 siblings, and my older sister, the oldest of the 4 of us, she's been on the show before. And Dana started and runs a very successful women's clothing boutique out of Southern California. And she's been doing that for, I want to say it's 7 or 8 years now, and really grown into a really nice little business. And so that's what she's been doing. My other 2 siblings are not currently entrepreneurs, but they've been involved in some entrepreneurial ventures. And I'm pretty confident that sometime in the next couple of years that my brother will start a business. He's in the brewery business. So he's learned the brewery trade, and he's really interested in starting up his own brewery. So I think he'll probably do that in the next couple of years. And then my younger sister has been involved in some really successful tech startups. She does a lot of independent contractor work because she's quite the scholar, and she speaks 4 or 5 different languages and does some translating work. And she's done a bunch of independent contractor type of work with multiple different businesses, and just a really, really intelligent woman. And, who knows what the future holds for her. She'll probably do something really, really special, in the years to come. Right now, she's kind of focusing more on raising her daughter and their son. They just had their second kid a couple months ago, baby Lucas. Yeah, but my entrepreneurial journey started a long time ago, and my first memory was back with my grandfather on my mom's side, who was quite the entrepreneur. He owned and operated multiple very successful businesses. He was an inventor, invented a really cool product, not the pavement world, but the concrete world. And then he also did a lot of real estate development as well, mostly on the commercial side. But my first memory was having a conversation with him. That was Grandpa Rotifer, and Grandpa Rotifer said to me that if I could go out and save $250, that he would match my savings with $500. So I'd have a total of $750. And so I went out and I mowed lawns, and I picked lemons off of the trees, and I sold bags of lemons to my neighbors, and did a bunch of odd jobs. I think it took me about 3 or 4 months, but I saved up $250, and sure enough, he matched it, and that kind of set me on my path to entrepreneurship. But a little bit more about me personally. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Tia. We've been together for about 11 years. We've been married for 6. I've got a stepson, Hunter. He's 19. We just moved him into school. He's going up to Utah Valley University up in the Salt Lake City area. So he's just been up there for a couple weeks. Super excited to start that chapter in his life. And then my wife and I tried for many, many years to have kids. And we were finally blessed with twins, Hendrix and Harper. They are almost 17 months now. And they are just the love and light of our lives. Pretty much all of my time, energy, effort, and everything else that one has is dedicated to those 2 little munchkins. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Pretty much sums it up. Obviously, you, Mr. Peterson, are my business partner now, and I'll turn it back over to you and tell us what I just told everybody, and then you can kind of intertwine in how you and I became official business partners earlier this year.
I know I'm older than you are, but you probably remember the Double Mint twins growing up, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should call Harper and Hendrix the COVID twins.
It's definitely a relevant assessment, because they were born right as COVID really started getting crazy and running rampant. So that's a fair statement.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I didn't live it with you, but I kind of lived it with you as you went through it. And it's, that was not an easy thing to do, to have preemie twins, specifically in the COVID era, and the hospital being essentially shut down and only one of you being able to be there at a time. I mean, it's just, that was a tough time for you guys and for your family, and just, making sure that they were going to be as healthy as they could be, given that they were born so small, and specifically Harper was born so small. And so it's been quite a ride you guys have been on, and I've watched slowly as the bags under your eyes have disappeared, and the old fully rested Landon has returned. And it's been a fun journey for me to watch as well. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I grew up just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, in Provo, actually very close to where Hunter's living now. I know where Hunter's living, and my parents live about a mile from Hunter, like maybe not even a mile. Directly down the street, you go directly south from Hunter's apartment and you'll run into my parents' house. And so that's where I grew up, graduated from Provo High School, which was at the time, it's now moved, but it was at the time, it was right across the street from Brigham Young University. And so that's been, the way that I grew up was following BYU sports. I'm a big sports guy, always have been. I love all sports, period, but college football for watching and attending is probably my favorite. Baseball would be a close second in terms of sitting in the stand. Baseball games, as many people know, are not as exciting as college football games. And so, but I love the game of baseball. They call it a thinking man's game, which I definitely fit that mold. I love to just watch the strategy and watch, the way that the whole thing gets played and, the game unfolds. But I grew up kind of the oldest child. My parents were divorced when I was very young, and my mom remarried a man who had 2 kids from his previous marriage. And my brother and I, that's a year younger than me, had been born at that time. And so I did have technically a sister that was older than me by about a year and a half, 2 years. But she didn't live with us most of the time. So I grew up as the oldest child. I was also the oldest child of the oldest child. So I was the oldest grandchild as well. My grandparents, my grandfathers were both farmers. One of them an independent farmer. The other one ran what was called a welfare farm for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have their own kind of welfare system. And my grandfather ran one of their farms for 26 years. And that's where I spent most of my childhood. And so if I had to point to where I got my work ethic from, it started with my grandfather and spending a bunch of time on the farm with him and driving tractors and doing whatever it takes to make a farm run. And then followed that up with my stepdad, who I called dad and really raised me, owning his own business and working alongside him as a stucco contractor, and just getting into that, business ownership really. But I think really the work ethic is the biggest thing that I got from both of them. And then the entrepreneurship bug really struck when I went to high school and took a class in 9th grade called Entrepreneurship in the Stock Market. And it just opened up a whole new world for me. At that point, I was sure I was going to law school. I wanted to be either a criminal defense or a criminal prosecutor and just, be in a courtroom every day and arguing for or against whatever was going on in the courtroom and defending somebody or trying to prosecute somebody. I just thought that was going to be the coolest job in the world until I took this entrepreneurship and stock market class. And growing up relatively poor, I hadn't been exposed to the stock market or any of those types of things. And just, it really kind of changed the trajectory of my life. So fast forward, I met my wife as a missionary for our church. We were both serving in Brussels, Belgium at the time. And our mission covered the southern half of Belgium, which is French speaking, and then the northern half of France. And so I came back from there and studied French at Cal State Fullerton, which oddly enough is a top 20 French program in the country. Most people, if you're not a baseball fan, have never heard of Cal State Fullerton unless you grew up in the Orange County or Southern California area. But it was a decent school, good experience for me. And while I was finishing my degree, I started my financial planning company and had our first kid kind of pretty darn close together, which was very stressful. Southern California is not a cheap place to live. It's not an easy place to start a business and also try to raise a family at the same time. But we made it. We fast forward now, and I've got a 21-year-old son that's starting his junior year at Arizona State studying sports journalism, and then an 18-year-old daughter that's getting ready to leave. We're actually going to start the drive this evening for her to go up and start her journey in college at BYU, Idaho in Rexburg, Idaho. Of course, I can't leave out my wife. My wife of 23 years, Robin, has been with me through thick and thin, did not grow up in an entrepreneurial family. And so that was very difficult for her early on. Her dad worked for the same corporation essentially his whole career. He started with another couple of corporations, but in the same industry, same area, didn't ever move. They've lived in the same house since 1969, regular paycheck every 2 weeks. And to this day is still receiving a regular pension paycheck from that company. And he retired in like 1989. Just a different background. And that was very difficult for her. She's kind of stuck with me through the early years and is now somewhat reaping the rewards.
So I got a question. I want you to just expound on something because I think it helps to set the stage for the advisor that you are today. You have a really unique background in our industry. So talk to us just a little bit about your professional roadmap over the last couple of decades so that we can understand, your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly kind of almost fell back into this industry by accident. You're probably too young to have looked at it for a job in the newspaper, but I looked for a job in the newspaper. I'd been frustrated at my current job that I was working at as a management trainee for Hertz car rental while I was finishing up my degree. And I was passed over for a promotion because, and I'm not lying to you when I tell you that the regional manager said to me, "This guy is married and has 3 kids. You're married with 1. So we're giving him the promotion." And so that was what prompted me to say, okay, I got to look for a different job, even though I'm still finishing up school. And I answered an ad for another management trainee position, but it just so happened to be in wealth management. And so it was one of those, oh my gosh, that's right. I loved that class in high school. Man, maybe this is meant to be. And that was kind of where that kicked off. But, I hadn't finished college at the time, still very young father. And I'm trying to, get people who have significant wealth to trust me to work with them. So, I did everything that I could to finish school as quickly as I could, know that I wanted to go get an advanced degree, and then also start to work on an educational background specific to our industry. And so, I finished that bachelor's degree in French. I went on to get a master's degree in business administration. And then simultaneous to all of that, began to work on other designations that I have today, like the Chartered Life Underwriter, the Certified Financial Planner designation. Recently got the Certified Business Exit Consultant with you at the same time. And then I'm just about to sit for an exam for a Certified Plan Fiduciary advisor as well, to work with corporate retirement plans, which we already do in our practice. But having that designation sets you apart a little bit when you're handling corporate retirement plans.
And then you've got extensive experience on the life insurance side of the business. Talk to us about that just for a minute, would you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I finished my MBA in 2008. So as you can imagine, the economy was not great at the time. And my wife said, the economy's not great. I don't know if we want to start over your business at the time, because I'd sold my practice in Southern California, moved to Utah to get my MBA at BYU. And she wasn't convinced that we wanted to start over. And so I went to work for a life insurance brokerage at the time with a salary plus commission type of a structure. And through that, kind of worked my way through that brokerage as what we would call a life insurance wholesaler. So for lack of a better, way of explaining it, I worked with advisors like us to incorporate life insurance into their business in the proper way. There are unfortunately too many advisors that don't fully understand how to use life insurance and financial planning, and how it can be beneficial and structured appropriately for clients to save them on taxes or help with estate planning or those sorts of things. So did that for about 5 years, and then I went to work for 2 different life insurance companies, specifically wholesaling their products to advisors again, before jumping back into personal production. And fast forward a few years, and we are where we are today.
Yeah, definitely. So today, we wanted to talk about our process and what makes us unique when it comes to serving business owners. But we also want to make sure that we're focusing on value for our listeners. And so we want to try to do our best to convey and use examples and scenarios and situations that people can relate to. But let's just start at the very beginning, because you and I very regularly say to people that we are not your traditional financial advisors. We are very different in the way that we have structured our businesses, the way that we get paid, the way that we work with our clients. So, we wanted to kind of talk about the different stages that we take our new clients through. But let's start at the very beginning. Talk to our listeners about like what happens when we very first get introduced to John Smith or Mary Smith, business owner, and we get referred to them from one of our existing clients or from one of our strategic partners. Maybe it's an attorney or an accountant, and they say, hey, you guys should talk to Austin and Landon. And they say, okay. And they sit down and meet with us for the first time. What can they expect in the first meeting?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the first meeting is almost like a drill session, if you will. I equate it to going to the dentist and having your tooth drilled. I mean, it can be painful, to be honest with you. But, of course, like anybody that's in business, you're going to start by building rapport and, explaining a little bit about what we do, and asking some questions. I mean, the reality is most business owners have done some level of financial planning along the way, right? Whether it's working with an attorney, working with an accountant, working with an investment advisor or a life insurance agent, they've done some level of planning along the way. And so we start by asking them that. And if they've done some, then of course they tell us yes. And we'll proceed to ask them, well, if you've already done some level of financial planning, or I'm telling you that most of my clients have done some level of financial planning, and we basically just ask them, why do you think that our clients have ended up engaging us then? And most of the time, the answer is they have no idea. But the reality is what we discover most often, and this is a long history of you and I, but it's also the group of advisors that we interact with on a regular basis in what's called the Business Intelligence Institute, which is just a group of about 100 advisors nationwide that focus on the business marketplace. It's just the reality is there's no coordination going on between the different advisors, right? Because we're not attorneys, we're not accountants. Every business owner needs both of those people. They need insurance agents to help them with their commercial insurance needs and all those sorts of things. But they're meeting with each of those people individually, and none of them are coordinating everything that they're doing from a planning standpoint to make sure that the business owner is able to achieve what it is that they're setting out to achieve. And so what we convey to them is that most of our clients feel way more confident in where they're headed by having everything coordinated together, so that it's not just being looked at through the tax lens or through the legal lens or whatever the case may be. But it's almost like, you like to describe it this way when we talk to our clients, it's almost like going up in a helicopter, looking down at their situation and saying, are we all going the same direction? There are all these aspects of your financial plan, but are we all going in the same direction? And most of the time, they're not. And so by us getting in there, getting involved and understanding the tax implications and understanding the legal implications to a degree, we're not tax or legal advisors, of course, but know enough to say, let's have a conversation with all of them together and coordinate together. And if they agree and understand at that point, then we say, listen, for us to know whether or not you can receive value from what we do, and for us to know that it's the best fit for us to work with you, are you okay if we ask you some personal financial questions? And then we spend about 45 minutes asking all those questions about their business, about their personal finances, about their insurance coverages, about their kids, about their parents. I mean, everything that you can imagine that has any sort of tie into their financial or business life, we're asking them about that in the next 45 to 75 minutes.
Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, host of Tycoons of Small Biz and co-founder of Backbone Planning Partners. If you're listening to the program and you're wondering how you could also be a guest on our program, please reach out to us at backboneplanning.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it's mutually a good fit to have you on the program. And also, if you're thinking about your business and what we do at Backbone Planning Partners and helping our business owners to plan for their biggest asset, that being their business, and want to understand what it's worth and how that's beneficial to you in your financial planning journey, please also reach out to us at backboneplanning.com, and we'd be happy to provide a no-obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the show today.
Let's see if we can come up with a quick example. So for anybody that's listening that says, great, you coordinate this, but like what is an example of something that we see with business owners a lot, where there is a major lack of coordination amongst their various accounts or assets and or the advisors that serve them? Is there something that kind of jumps out at you that you could speak to real quick?
Yeah, I mean, you might be thinking of something different, but what seems to come to mind for me as the most common is the fact that as a business owner, most business owners that we work with have at least one other partner. And so they've put together, a buy-sell agreement, which basically just documents what's going to happen if they want to exit the business or they become disabled or they pass away or whatever the case may be. But that document was drawn up almost in a vacuum by that attorney and just documented kind of what's going to happen. But then it gets put on the shelf and nothing is done to make sure that that's able to come to life, so to speak. And so they're not working with an expert like us to make sure that they understand the implications and how to actually fund that buy-sell agreement. So the statistics are very, very low for business owners that even have a buy-sell agreement. But then they're even lower for those that do have a buy-sell agreement. It's been funded with, say, for example, life insurance and disability insurance to cover that eventuality, right? So I'll give you a quick example. One of my clients that I worked with and known for, 20 plus years at this point. And when they started their business, it was 3 partners. And I said, great, let's make sure you're putting together a buy-sell agreement. They hadn't hired me at the time, but it was somebody that I knew personally. And I said, look, just as your friend, you should put together this buy-sell agreement. Yeah, we put together the buy-sell agreement. Great. Did you fund it with life insurance and disability insurance? At the very least. And has it been reviewed by somebody that didn't draft it to make sure that it says what it's supposed to say? Well, no, but I mean, we're in our early 30s. I don't know that we need to worry about that. We're focused on growing the business, not really worried about it. And I said, okay, well, I'm not saying you need to do any of that with me. I'm just saying, as your friend, you need to do that. So they don't follow that advice, unfortunately. Fast forward a few years, 2 of the partners get together and buy out the 3rd partner. And at that point, I remind him, hey, you got to redo the buy-sell agreement. So while you're redoing it, let's look at these things again. Yeah, I know we need to do it. I know. Let's reconvene. I do see the importance. We're older now. Let's reconvene and have this discussion. Well, before we were able to fully get them into underwriting, we had literally started to look at all the different options for disability insurance and life insurance and some of the other things that the business needed at this point. And they had hired me by that point. The remaining partner has a massive heart attack at age 45 and dies. And so literally the plan was not in place, was not able to be carried out the way that they had anticipated or wanted. And so the remaining business partner, the only one of the 3 that's still there, over the next 5 years had to buy out his remaining partner's widow with after-tax dollars. So he's taking additional distributions from the company, buying her out with after-tax dollars. And then, of course, her attorney, and it was amicable, but her attorney that's negotiating on her behalf requires that my remaining client carry what? Disability insurance and life insurance, so that if something happens to him during the 5-year buyout, that she still gets her money. And so it was truly that double whammy because the financial planning had not been done. The advisors had not coordinated on what needed to be done. And the clients hadn't fully listened to the advice that they were receiving. And it hindered the business for about 5 years from being able to grow the way that it could have if that had just been paid for with life insurance that had funded that buy-sell agreement. She would have received it tax-free. There would have been no hit to the business. And he's got some cash on hand potentially to then hire somebody to replace what he did, and the business continues as before. But instead, they had to kind of struggle through for about 5 years, and they still did fine. Don't get me wrong, but the cash flow of the business was not near what it would have been if you didn't have to handle that buyout through cash flow from the business rather than an insurance policy.
We meet with a prospective client. We have that initial conversation. We identify opportunities and gaps, and now we're ready to meet with them again. And so the way that you and I operate in our practice is we have our initial meeting, gather a ton of information, and then we bring that back and we analyze that as a team. Then we come back to the client, prospective client at this point, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, and we have our second meeting. That meeting we call the engagement proposal meeting. And at that meeting, we essentially spend an hour, typically about an hour, and we walk them through exactly what we would do for them, what it would mean to them, to their business, to their family. We quantify that so that they can wrap their head around actual numbers, so they can understand real value from what we're going to do. And then we communicate to them how much that we would charge in order to get that done. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was wondering as you started to phrase that if you were going to make me answer the question again, or if you were going to answer it yourself. So I was prepared to push it back to your court and say this isn't just an interview of Austin.
Right.
But
right.
But
so,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So we have our second meeting, the engagement proposal meeting. That's pretty unique in our industry. Very, very few advisors will do that, because not to knock other advisors, but most financial advisors out there are really concerned about one thing, and that is capturing and managing investment assets. And what makes us different in that regard is that our business model supports, or I should say, it lends to serving business owners well, because we tell this to people all the time, to our business owner, prospective clients and clients. We don't have to be managing your investments. You can keep them wherever they are, and to stay engaged with us, we just charge a flat fee for ongoing advice. And that seems to resonate with a lot of our prospective and then ultimately current clients. But let's talk about what happens after that. So real quick before
you go into that, I wanted to kind of point out really why we do that and why we feel that it's beneficial, right? Because a couple of things. First, most business owners in our country, like the large majority of business owners in our country, most of their net worth is tied up in their business, right? So they typically don't have a lot of outside investments to manage anyway. But even if they do, like you said, we're not tied to them moving their investments to us. Now, most of our business owners choose to have us handle their investments as well, but it's their choice. And the reason it's their choice, or the reason it's beneficial for us to work the way that we do, is that our business owner clients know that we're giving them advice not tied to us being able to manage their investments and capture that revenue, if you will, we're giving them advice that they're paying us for. So just like you pay an accountant or just like you pay an attorney for their advice or for their time, we're set up that same way. And we feel that it gives us the best ability to be unbiased and just provide advice to them, regardless of whether we manage their investments. Now, managing investments is still a large part of our practice. We manage a lot of money still for our clients, but we're not leading with investments or giving them advice that's predicated upon them letting us manage their investments.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Brad. And that helps provide some additional color. All right. So stage 2. So we've gotten hired and we start to move forward. And one of the first things that we do is we do a business and a personal valuation. And if you look on our website, it says something to the effect of getting an estimated range of value of your business. We can talk a little bit more about that. That's probably good information because a business owner thinks their business is worth what it's worth. That's not typically true. There's many different valuation methods and ways to value a business. And that's why we like to talk to our business owners about the range of value, because it depends on what ultimately ends up happening with your business, which will determine the value. For example, if a business owner, I don't know, let's say they run a travel agency and they essentially have no assets. The business doesn't really own any assets. They don't have any vehicles or heavy machinery or anything like that. So there's no asset value to the business in that regard. So if they were to just shut down and liquidate the business, their business might not be worth anything at all, or maybe it's several $1,000s. They got some, computers or something like that. And on the opposite side of that spectrum, let's say that they ultimately sell their business to a strategic buyer, which would be somebody probably in their industry that sees an opportunity to acquire them, where you're usually going to get top dollar for that. So let's just say that the business it's a $10 million business if it's acquired by a strategic buyer, and that would get you quote unquote top dollar. So really your range of value might be 0 to $10 million. But doing the business and the personal valuation, that is a critical step in our process, because we have to understand, just like any financial planner would, we have to understand, where are you now? Where do you stand today? Except because you and I focus, exclusively or primarily on working with private business owners when it comes to our new clients, that is a step that cannot be excluded from the process, because we are helping them to manage their biggest asset, which is what we call pre-liquid. Because right now it is not liquid. Private businesses are illiquid assets. So we also do a business valuation for tracking purposes, right? Because we want to understand what your business is worth today. And then we also want to understand, when we update your planning, we also want to understand what your business is worth next year, the year after, and the year after, and the year after, and so on, so that we can help you to track the growth of your business, the enterprise value of your business, and then also help you as the Mr. or Mrs. business owner translate to, how does that translate over to your personal net worth, right? And we talk a lot about helping our clients to move to transfer their wealth from their business balance sheet over onto their personal balance sheet. So let me pause there and ask you, why is that important when we're helping our clients do that? Now that's not something that happens overnight, but throughout the course of years, why would a business owner be concerned about moving some of their net worth from their illiquid business over to their personal balance sheet, which typically is much more liquid? Why is that important? Why would someone want to do that?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind for me. I mean, first of all, the statistics of business owners who ultimately end up selling their business is very, very low. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of them you kind of hit on, whether there's just really no asset value, or there's nobody who's interested in paying for it. Now, there's a lot of different reasons that a business doesn't ultimately end up selling, not the least of which is they decide to just transition it to the next generation, right? And so if there's not some sort of a liquidity event that comes up with the business, but you're heavily dependent on the business for your ability to be financially independent later, you're kind of in trouble if there is no liquidity event. And so that would be one aspect for sure that comes to mind. The other aspect is, if you're working with us or other advisors who are going to ultimately help you prep your business for that eventual sale and do everything that we can to get it in place to have the best possible exit, negotiating power, if you don't need any money from your business because you're completely financially independent outside of the business, is immense. I mean, you can go to the negotiating table and not have to take anything that they're throwing at you because you do not need the money. And I don't know that we can emphasize that enough, and what that does for a business owner, because you can ultimately just choose to walk away and say, well, it doesn't make sense for me to sell it for that price, so I'll just continue to operate it. Or I'll hire somebody to come in, or, transition the ownership of the business to a trust and let, a professional management team come in and manage it and create generational wealth for my family. There's so many things that you can do differently if you're in the driver's seat in terms of you're completely financially independent outside of the business. And that's just, the icing on the cake if you do ultimately end up selling your business. Anything you'd add to that?
Not really. I mean, one of the things that just jumped out at me was, when we're talking to our business owner clients about risk, I like how you always say that nobody in their right mind would ever take 100% of their monies that they have and invest it into one company, right? So as an example, if I had, $100,000 to my name, that's every penny that I was worth. For me to go take that $100,000, put it into Apple, or to put it into Tesla, or to put it into IBM, right? Just to dump all of it into one company. I don't think there's anybody that would argue that would be a very silly thing to do. Why? Because I'm putting all of my eggs in one basket. I am totally dependent upon that one company to either be successful, or I also am at their mercy if they were to go bankrupt, right? If their stock went down to zero and I had all my money in there, well, guess what? I now have $0 to my name, right? And so, I like how you say this, when we're talking to our business owner clients, like, you would never go out and put all of your money into Tesla stock, right? Nobody would ever do that. 10 out of 10 times, everyone shakes nods their head up and down and says, oh yeah, like, absolutely, I would never do that. But that is exactly what most business owners do unintentionally, because they've been running their business for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever the case may be. And in their perception of their business is that it's not risky. Because I've been doing this for so long. What do you mean risk? My business has been plugging along. I've always done $5 to $10 million of revenue for the last 15 years, and I've always made between $1 to $2 million of profit every single year. And what do you mean risk? There's no risk. And so I think you and I have learned over the years and through experience of working with a lot of very successful private business owners that it's not about trying to change their mind. It's just about helping them to look at their business through a different lens and help them to understand the importance, again, just shifting some of that wealth from their business balance sheet onto their personal balance sheet. Now, we've only got 10 minutes left. So, yeah.
Time flies.
Yes, it does. We've been blowing through this. So, we've got a couple other stages that we want to talk through. We'll have to talk through them relatively quickly. But so after we do the personal and the business valuation, then we kind of move into like this getting organized stage. And you want to just talk about that for a minute or two?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously a little bit different with each business owner depending on their situation. But think of it this way. I mean, when we all have this picture in our mind when it's when it's tax time, you take your box of receipts to your accountant, right? And you have them go through it and figure it all out. What were the expenses last year, and what does everything look like? It's pretty similar to that in essence, right? I mean, we're gathering all of the documents that you can think of, whether it's the business or the personal documents. So we've got legal documents for estate planning. We've got the legal documents for the business themselves. You get the operating agreement, the shareholder agreements, anything that you've got from a legal standpoint for the business. And then we're looking at tax returns over the last several years, both business and personal. And then on top of that, you've got investment accounts and retirement accounts. And we're looking at the corporate retirement plan. And, essentially everything that we talked about in the first meeting, we're now looking at it and saying, how can we make this more organized and easier for you as the business owner so that you're not having to worry about it? That's the reality. Is a business owner wants to be able to say, Landon and Austin, let's take care of this. Let's get it all organized. In a perfect world, which is really not realistic, but in a perfect world, they're getting one statement that shows all of their stuff in one spot, right? Now, when they meet with us for reviews, which we'll cover in a minute, but when they meet with us for reviews, they can see it all in one spot because we're organizing it for them and sharing it with them in one spot. But that's really what we're doing in that stage, is getting everything kind of put together and making sure that we don't have duplicates, because people set up different accounts at different times for different reasons and then almost forget about why they had them or even that they had them at all. And they end up duplicating a lot of things that can be consolidated and more organized.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple things to that. In our getting organized phase, we talk about helping them to determine what type of owner they are, and then understanding what potential business transition options might be available to you as this particular type of owner. So just due to the fact that we don't have a lot of time to get into that, I'll just cite a quick example. 80%, it's actually a little bit higher, but around 80% of our business owner clients, we have them take a survey, right? I guess the Business Exit Readiness Index survey. It's about 10 to 20 questions, and it helps them to understand how financially and mentally ready they are to leave their business, whether it's now or it's 10 years down the road, doesn't matter. But it helps to kind of not peg you, not to back you against the wall, as being, this type of owner, and I'm using air quotes, but it really helps to just provide some clarity as to what type of business owner you are when it comes to your financial preparedness, and just as importantly, your mental preparedness. And then it helps to educate you. We help to educate you around what are some potential succession options that we can consider based on the type of owner that you are now. And a lot of people kind of fall into this bucket of they are a stay and grow type of owner, just meaning that they're not financially or mentally ready to leave their business. So they need to stay. They need to continue to build their wealth. They need to continue to drive the enterprise value of the business. And that's one of the things that we do during this getting organized period as well, is we help to kind of expose them to some realistic, short-term, simple things that they can do or consider to start to reduce the risk of their business. Because ultimately, the less risky your business is to an outside buyer, the better chance that you have of actually ever selling or transitioning your business to another party.
That actually leads right into another thing that we have them do, right? We have them go through what's called the owner dependency index. And business owners have a hard time wrapping their heads around this a little bit. But the reality is, like you just said, the less dependent the business is on them day in and day out, the better or the more valuable the business is. And that's hard to do, to let go of some things along the way as a business owner, because you built this thing from scratch, right? It's your baby. It's everything that you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into for years. But the value of your business goes up tremendously by starting to let go of those reins and having other people run the day-to-day. So you're truly then becoming an investor at that point. You're like somebody who owns shares of Tesla. Hopefully not all of the shares that you own are in Tesla or your current business by that point. But by you being an investor in the business, your business becomes worth a whole heck of a lot more than being the CEO and the person who's running it day to day.
We've moved through that stage now, getting organized. We talked about what type of owner you are, what are some transition options, what are some things that you can look at to potentially reduce the risk of your business, identify and we kind of remedy some kind of close some of those gaps that we have brought to the surface. So now we kind of get into the final stages, making a decision and then kind of implementing. Now that we've kind of understood where we are from a financial and a mental preparedness standpoint, now we kind of understand like what options are actually available to us, right? For most private business owners at the highest level, there's only a couple of succession or exit options that are available to each kind of owner. It's not like you've got, a dozen or 24 options on the table. It's like, no, you probably have 1 or 2, maybe 3 different options if you've got a really nice business. But the next stage is just kind of making that decision and then kind of moving forward with some implementation. And that certainly includes understanding the monetary value of the transition that you're kind of working towards, right? And that can always change down the road as your business gets bigger, gets more profitable. The options available to you start to become greater. But also in this stage right here, you're going to receive your first version of your financial plan. And at this point, we've had, what would you say at this time, Austin? We've had somewhere between probably 3 and maybe 6 meetings. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Okay, so 3 to 6 meetings, we're delivering your first version of your financial plan. And then take us home, Austin. How do we kind of wrap this all up kind of in our last stage, which is the kind of the execution and the protection and the ongoing, service to our clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, implementation can be different for every, business owner, but we're going to spend, after we've kind of delivered that first financial plan and that kind of lays out what we're going to do over the next 12 months, we then get to work. We roll up our sleeves. We start to talk about whatever it is that we're seeing as either a coordination gap or something that could be done differently inside of the business to help it grow its enterprise value. And we'll sit there and we'll consult with the business owner and their management team over how to fix some of those things, right? So it's almost like a consultative relationship at that point where we're sharing our background and our experiences. And if it's beyond our expertise, then we will introduce these business owners to people who have expertise beyond our area of expertise in a given area. But we're going to spend time making sure that we're building this plan and putting them on a roadmap to transfer, like you said earlier, assets from the business balance sheet over to the personal balance sheet, put together that timeline on what the exit looks like, start to hone in on what we need to do to make that exit and the strategy that we're employing as beneficial as possible. And we're meeting on an ongoing basis. And then at least once a year, we're meeting for a renewal meeting to discuss, okay, what did we accomplish in year one? What do we need to accomplish in year two? What's that going to look like from a time commitment for us? What else have we put in place? And we have a discussion around renewing our fee for the next year. And that's completely dependent upon what our input is going to need to be for the next year. And that's typically 50 to 100% of the initial fee. It's an agreement back and forth. We think that we're going to have to spend this much time and we're going to be working towards this. What do you think about that? And, most of the time it's pretty easy to come to that agreement because they've seen some of the value that we brought to that point. They've seen themselves save money. They've seen the enterprise value increase. They've seen these different things that indicate to them, wow, if we continue to do these types of things, then we're going to continue to be on this path. It's worth every penny at that point to pay the renewal fee and to continue down that path that we were on. And then the last thing that I'll mention is at that point, when they've been able to perceive and see for themselves firsthand the value that we bring to the table, we typically have a conversation with them about who else do you know that has a similar type of business to you that would also benefit from the value that we bring to the table. And that's when we get introduced to other business owners that we can help as well.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're basically out of time. I'll add something real quick and then we'll wrap up. I think one of the things that makes us different is that when we're working with our business owner clients, everybody says that they are proactive in how they service clients. But when you've worked with enough successful private business owners like you and I have, we can help them to anticipate things before they actually happen. And I think that is a huge differentiator in the way that we run and service, run our practice and service our clients. And I think that is arguably one of the biggest benefits of the work that we do, at least the ongoing work that we do for our business owner clients, is that we've worked with a lot of successful business owners. We've seen their businesses double, triple, quadruple, 10x, over the course of years. And we understand the pain points that come with that. And we understand the things that will happen with their people and their operations and their finances. And so, we're meeting with our business owner clients. I don't even know how many times we probably interact with them, maybe half a dozen to a dozen, depending on how involved we are with them. But to be able to proactively bring ideas and issues to the table and to address them before they even actually happen, I think is something that we're pretty decent at, and our clients get tremendous value out of. So, all right, well, we are over time now. We'd love to connect with anybody that's listening to this, whether you're a business owner, an advisor to a business owner, someone that wants to start a business. We'd love to connect with you and have a conversation and see how we can help each other. Our website is backboneplanning.com. You can find Austin Peterson or myself, Landon Mance. We're all over LinkedIn, or you can Google Tycoons of Small Biz, and you can find us through our podcast. So, Austin, really enjoyed it, man. As always, love your brother. And anything you want to say before we close?
Love you too. And I would say, don't forget about our YouTube channel.
All right. Right on. Well, thanks, guys.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business RadioX and your favorite